Nobody who invented the gun was trying to invent the gun. That's the part almost nobody tells you. The real story starts 900 years before automatic rifles, artillery, or handguns ever existed, in a mountain workshop in Tang Dynasty China, where a handful of monks were chasing something else entirely. Not war. Not conquest. Immortality. They believed the right mixture of minerals could stop death itself. So they mixed sulfur, charcoal, a mineral called saltpeter. Recipe after recipe, generation after generation, searching for the formula that would let a person live forever. One batch didn't grant eternal life. It exploded. Old records mention singed beards, burned down workshops, panicked monks stumbling out of smoke-filled rooms with no idea what they just made. They called it fire medicine, a strange, almost embarrassed name for something that had failed at its actual job. Nobody in that room understood they just created the single most consequential chemical discovery in the history of human conflict. Here's the part that makes it work. Saltpeter releases oxygen violently when heated. Combine that with two already flammable ingredients, and you get a sudden, forceful expansion of gas. That expanding gas is the entire secret. Whether it launches a firework into the sky or a bullet through steel, the underlying physics never changes. For over a century, that's basically all this stuff was used for: fireworks, festivals, spectacle. Then, sometime around the 10th century, someone in the military looked at all that noise and color and thought, this doesn't have to be pretty. It could be terrifying. The first weapon born from that idea was almost laughably crude: a bamboo tube packed with gunpowder, lashed to the end of a spear. Light it, and it spat fire directly at whoever stood in front of you. Historians call it the fire lance, and in 1132, during the siege of a Chinese city under attack, defenders used it against soldiers climbing their walls. It worked. Not because it was precise, it wasn't, but because nobody on the other side had ever faced an enemy who could throw fire at will. Then someone made a small change that mattered more than almost anything else in this entire story. Instead of just letting the tube spit flame, they packed it with pottery shards and metal pellets. Suddenly that expanding gas wasn't just burning people, it was launching things at them. That one idea, projectile plus expanding gas, is the actual seed of every firearm that exists today. Bamboo couldn't survive the pressure for long, though. It split. It burst. Sometimes in the user's own hands. So Chinese metalworkers solved that too, casting bronze tubes strong enough to contain the blast. By the 1200s, hand cannons were already in real use across China. Crude, heavy, dangerous even to their own operators, but undeniably effective. Then the Mongols showed up. When Mongol armies swept through China in the 1200s, they didn't just conquer cities. They absorbed technology wherever they found it. Gunpowder weapons went home with them, carried west across an empire that eventually stretched from the Pacific almost to Eastern Europe. Trade routes move goods. Armies move ideas faster. Within a few generations, a Chinese invention had crossed an entire continent. By the late 1200s, it reached Europe, and Europe did what Europe tends to do. It took someone else's invention and refined it obsessively. Early European hand cannons were clumsy, slow, wildly inaccurate, essentially a small tube mounted on a stick, lit with a burning ember and a prayer. But even crude, they broke something ancient. Castle walls that had stood for centuries started falling. Armored knights, the backbone of medieval warfare, discovered that steel plate meant nothing against gunpowder. The next real leap didn't come from a bigger weapon, it came from a smarter mechanism. In the late 1400s, someone attached a burning cord to a mechanical arm called a serpentine. Pull a trigger, the cord dropped into the powder, the gun fired, no more juggling flame and aim with two different hands. That single invention, the matchlock, turned gunpowder weapons from battlefield novelties into the backbone of organized infantry across the world, from Ottoman janissaries to Japanese gunsmiths who refined the design into some of the finest firearms on Earth. Matchlocks still had one obvious flaw: an open flame, constantly burning, useless in the rain. The wheellock fixed that with a spinning mechanical spark, but it was expensive, so only the wealthy carried one. Then, around 1610, a French gunsmith solved the problem for good. The flintlock struck steel with stone to create a spark instantly, reliably, in almost any weather. It would dominate battlefields for the next 200 years, through colonial wars, through revolutions, until the 1800s brought the percussion cap and rendered every mechanism before it, instantly, completely obsolete. So when did the first real gun finally arrive? Not in one moment. Not from one inventor. It arrived in fragments: a failed potion, a flaming stick, a bronze tube, a mechanical spark, carried across 4 centuries and passed between people who never met, speaking different languages, serving different empires, each one solving a problem the last person hadn't noticed yet. The gun that would end the Age of Knights, redraw castle walls into star-shaped fortresses, and decide the outcome of wars for the next several centuries began its existence as a mistake, made by people who were never trying to build a weapon at all.